if data is not real time, then it's not real. And all of these things combined, say at a 500 ton foundry, which is a mid-sized foundry, you could easily be saving ₹1 crore a year.
We're doing a simple thing such as sending spectrometer readings to WhatsApp along with the addition dilution suggestions. People need this data so that they understand what they did well.
And also they can drive decisions with it.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, a business is just a set of people united at a common purpose.
We've seen time and time again that foundries with the best resources win. But today that resource is called data. So what exactly you do with the data once you've collected and how exactly you can put it into your bank account, that's what we're here to learn about today on this podcast with Naman from NowPurchase.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian.
Naman, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
So this was a very long time we've been trying to collaborate.
Yep.
And
I think pretty much since episode 1 or 2 we have been in touch, and it's great to finally be here.
Right. So I'm really happy. This is my second time in Calcutta.
Awesome. Welcome again.
Right. So let's just quickly understand. Like, I know data is the cornerstone of NowPurchase, right? But give us a little bit of your background about how NowPurchase came to be. Like you said, your family was involved in the foundry as well.
So I think my grandfather started with a modest machine shop back in 1960.
Okay.
Funnily enough, he was working in the procurement space as a professional at a large railway foundry called Texmaco.
Okay.
And he started this machine shop, and our family business has been in existence for over 65 years.
Got it.
It's an engineering business, and we operate 2 foundries, one in ferrous and one in non-ferrous. I personally did not spend too much time at the foundry.
Okay.
I personally spent time working with startups in Singapore and US, but found a great opportunity where the marriage of technology and foundries could happen. Right. And with which I think NowPurchase was born.
So this is something I never knew about you, the Singapore and the Singapore startup scene. So what was that like about? Like, I'm sure people will be interested to find that out.
So, I went initially to Singapore for my education at NUS. And then when I went, I did not know what startups were. Even startups were not that mainstream. Social media was not that big that time.
Correct.
And that's when in my third year, I first time got exposed to startups there while applying for a scholarship to US. And basically the scholarship was around an entrepreneurship program.
Right.
And we had to work at startups in Singapore and US while studying.
Okay.
And the scene in Singapore and US was very different, a little bit more mature, given the economies are more developed than India. But one thing which really struck home for me was that these were developed economies, which meant that most of the problems had been solved.
Right.
So people were solving for the good to have problems, the core problems.
Not a lot of opportunity or headroom, you would say.
Yeah, headroom was there for good to have, right? Like we would say the first world problems, not to the real deal where you're really impacting the core of the individual's life or the core of the economy. And that's something which really drove me back to come back to India after almost spending 7 years overseas.
Okay. So you this was probably 10 years ago?
Around 7-8 years back,
7-8 years back. And you come back to India, you see some opportunity. Your family is in the foundry industry, right? So you chose not to go into the hardcore foundry industry, but try to use those contacts, leverage the family name that you have, and start with scrap, I think, right?
Sure. Actually, this first story is actually much beyond that. Initially NowPurchase started off an e-commerce marketplace for day-to-day consumables like bearings, tools, tackles, safety gear. So it was like an Amazon for industrial goods. We did that for almost 3 years, 2017 to just before COVID.
Right.
And we realized that the behavior in India to support an horizontal kind of a place where you're serving all the industries was not really there. So it made sense to just focus on one vertical and one industry. And that's when during our learning, and one big thing which you mentioned about the family is that we got to learn a lot. We were able to go and spend time at the foundry and realize what's really happening. And what really struck home for us was that in that procurement experience, we always thought that raw materials are something which is already solved for. But foundry is a fascinating industry where all the raw materials which go into the industry are pretty much unsolved for, non-standardized. The supply sources are fragmented. If you think about the largest raw material category on earth, one of the largest, which I say is metal scrap, right? A little over $20 billion is consumed in India, and not even one large supplier that you could relate to. Right? Or you would know. But if you look at any other raw material categories, whether it's cement, paint, steel, each of us would know a homegrown brand or a home-known brand.
Right. We know who the largest in that market is.
Absolutely. In metal scrap, we don't know. And that really was a fascinating point which struck home with us. And that's when we started building NowPurchase 2.0, which is a procurement and production solution for the metal manufacturing industry. And we started off with Foundries as our first go-to market.
Okay. That's great. So I think things have gone well for you. You're in fourth, fifth year, I believe.
Yep. So I think 2020 September is when we launched this version of the business. Been a little over 4 years. I think every day is a new day. We're still just building. I think there's
Correct.
so much of scope. Foundries are a little over 5,000 in number just in India. $19 billion in
Right.
output. So I think the scope is humongous.
Do you see that number climbing for the foundries?
Absolutely. I think, not just from a perspective of what the foundries are doing in terms of they increasing their productivity. And, you mentioned about data at the start. I think each foundry, when you buy or set up a project, you think this foundry will produce, say, 1,000 tons a month. But usually it ends up being 800. And that 200 delta is somewhere where the productivity is getting lost.
Correct.
Which could be due to either inefficient procurement or inefficient systems, which could be because of lack of access to real-time data. So that is one place where we see the foundries themselves being able to increase 20%. And then there's the whole macro sphere, right? Where if you look at the China plus one sourcing strategy, where people are looking at India as a credible way, is again a huge boost. And India is a developing economy with the massive all-time spends being in infrastructure, defense, railways, roads, automobiles. With the EV boom, I think the foundry is a mother industry which serves all of this.
Right.
So I just see this growing both on the domestic demand side as well as exports.
Right. It's also funny that you mentioned it may not actually, the growth may not come in number of foundries, but it's definitely coming in turnover per foundry. Right? It's because we can see like second, third generation not continuing in the foundry industry. That is a trend that we are seeing. So smaller foundries are shutting down, but for sure the volume per foundry is increasing.
So I would just add a slight caveat, right? They're not really shutting down. What they're happening is two things. We are seeing two trends, because we have spent last 4.5 years as a team. We might have visited close to 1,000 foundries.
Right.
I personally would have visited a good 100 over foundries. So what we are seeing the two trends. One is some of these smaller foundries are getting acquired by larger groups.
Right.
We have seen this happen in Jharkhand, where Ramakrishna Forgings has acquired a couple of foundries. So that is one trend. Second, we are also seeing that some of the foundries are getting professionalized, where might be the family promoter group does not want to carry on with it, but there is a professional group which is coming in and the promoters are taking it forward.
Okay. Even for such a like a brick and mortar industry like the foundry, you're still seeing that happening.
Yes, we're seeing that happening, because I think there's a perception, right? Like someone comes, say you mentioned about second and third gen. So they have come from, say, a service job at an MNC or at a corporate or a startup.
Correct.
And they have an image of a foundry.
Correct.
And that image of a foundry is chaotic. That image of the foundry is a lot of stuff moving around. That image of the foundry is non-structured.
Correct.
But these new generation folks have the opportunity to turn their image around, right? Because if you visit a foundry in a Japan or a Germany or America, you see a very different industry.
It is very organized, right?
It's very organized. So there's no or leave them, right? You go to some of the well-run, amazing foundries in our own country.
Correct.
Some of them I've visited in different parts. You would see that's happening. So it's not a lot to do about the foundry industry, but the way the foundry industry is run, the thought process,
Correct.
the DNA, the thesis which they run. I think a lot of those also impact it.
So the foundry industry is changing and you're looking to capitalize on this opportunity, which you already have, right? So you operate in two verticals, right? Or maybe it's one vertical with two sub-verticals, right?
Sure.
So there is a lot of confusion related to that, and that's exactly why we're sitting down and deciphering that.
So, we think of it as one business, right? We are helping the foundry industry solve for their two key angles, right? One is procurement and production, and both of these work hand in hand, right? Raw materials, the quality of raw materials affects your production.
Correct.
And how you use the raw materials again affects your entire foundry's output.
Correct.
So that's what we are solving. So you mentioned about the two key services which we provide. So NowPurchase's procurement services gives foundries access to quality raw materials like metal scrap, alloys, additives, nodularizers through our own network of warehouses, brands, and processing centers. And then we have our digital solution called Metal Cloud.
Right.
Metal Cloud is a digital solution which helps foundries digitize their entire melting operations by giving them access to real-time data, which helps them make smarter decisions around melting, around molding, around fettling, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So when you started off in 20, you mentioned, right? So did you all start off with building Metal Cloud, or was it like the procurement side that you all?
Sure. So we started with the procurement business. We started supplying just ferroalloys. We were not even supplying scrap, right? We just supplied a couple of SKUs in ferroalloys.
Correct.
And then as we kept supplying, we were always knowing that technology has to be a key aspect of it.
Correct.
And in my discussion with Ankan, we were always looking at different angles of technology. What we realized through our experiments is people are only adopting an online way of purchasing if the prices are cheaper in a B2B raw material setup.
Correct.
And that made us realize that the technology angle has to be beyond that, which led us to a lot of research, a lot of soul searching, which eventually led us to the creation of Metal Cloud, probably 18 months after that.
Okay. So 18 months, was the time you took to develop Metal Cloud, or is it like you?
So September 2020 is when we started the raw material service.
Right.
Sometime in 2021 is when we started developing Metal Cloud. By end of 2021, we had the first version of Metal Cloud. And then we spent time just giving it out to our customers free of cost for entire 22 and most of 23.
So this would have been like sort of like a beta testing or
beta testing, and also we were sort of underestimating the value of data and technology at the foundry space.
Right.
So we thought it's a good to have, right? So that's why we're not charging our customers. So we were sort of, really underestimating that, and we were happily proven wrong in the later part of our journey.
Correct. So the price quickly must have gone up.
yes.
That's nice. Okay. So if I had to ask you, what unique problem does Metal Cloud seek to solve, right? Maybe in one sentence, what would it be?
Sure. So like you said, right at the start, data is the new gold mine. And if data is not real time, then it's not real. That's what we say, right? Only data which is real time is real.
I like that. If data is not real time, it's not real.
That's right. So, and the reality is, as most organizations, the data today is not real time. But the world is changing, where the access to IoT, access to SaaS solutions, access to scalable cloud solutions has made sure that data real time is available.
Correct.
Not just to the large behemoths like Tatas and Jindals of the world, but to the SME sector, which is pretty much the foundry space.
Correct.
And that's where our entire thought process around Metal Cloud comes in, where we're leveraging a combination of IoTs as well as a combination of SaaS solutions to provide this to our customers.
Okay, just a follow-up question. Do you also supply the hardware for this, the IoT software? I mean,
today the world has moved to a place where everything is turnkey, right? You go to a place, one guy, you want everything to be done.
Correct.
So we are a turnkey solution.
Okay, so everything comes from you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually really reassuring, because for you, maybe to tell a client, you get the hardware from here, the software we provide, and then there's a problem with either solution from both sides.
Right.
So it's very hectic. So that's really nice. It's an end-to-end solution. So Metal Cloud is about maybe 2-3 things, right? One of them is energy efficiency, correct? Because you claimed that you can reduce 1 crore, right, in expenses from a foundry just by looking at the energy consumption.
So I think 1 crore is across various factors.
Right.
So the way we look at it is that if data is not real time, right, you're losing at every step. So whether it is energy efficiency, whether it's the kind of materials you use, whether it is the rejections you're having, whether it is the speed of root cause analysis, whether it's the rework which is needing on the rejections, whether it's the manpower involved with doing all of this.
Right.
And all of these things combined, say at a 500-ton foundry, which is a mid-sized foundry, you could easily be saving 1 crore rupees a year.
Right.
And it's across a combination of power, material, manpower, lack of reduction in rejections and all of that. And that is where we believe that 1 crore savings is absolutely doable. And we've seen that happening, right? We have worked with a little over 100 foundries where the Metal Cloud is deployed today. And we're seeing it happen across these various different themes.
Correct. So give us some examples as to how a foundry can immediately start to reduce their energy consumption, right? If say I'm running a 500-ton foundry right now, cast iron, how do I reduce my energy consumption immediately to at least get me closer to that 1 crore of savings that you mentioned?
Sure. So firstly, I think the key aspect again goes back to data, right? People having the ability to be able to say that, when I manufactured that particular grade of axle wheel for my customer, that particular production heat was costing me this much electricity. Firstly, the data access is needed.
Okay.
So how do you make sure that data is real-time recorded through a combination of IoTs and other digital melting logs is important. So once that happens, I think foundry owners are extremely smart entrepreneurs.
Right.
They're able to look at the data and themselves come up with the right insights to be able to change it.
Right.
So that is the first thing. Second thing, the power consumption is also something which is very much linked with raw materials. So if you think about the entire furnace, right, it's a finite space. And you can go to a foundry which is running a 1-ton furnace. Some of them would be melting 900 kgs of material. Some of them would be melting 1100 kgs of material.
Correct.
Because it's a finite volumetric space.
Right.
So what is the packing density, right, of the raw materials you're melting? Are you melting loose scrap or are you melting well bundled dense scrap? This again has a change because a 10 by 10 cuboid of scrap could be weighing 30 kgs, it could be weighing 400 kgs.
So you mean denser scrap has a lower melting loss?
Of course. So like 30 kgs or 40 kgs is around 10 kgs of extra scrap being melted in the same volumetric space.
Right.
Now imagine if I'm putting, say 50 bundles, it's like 500 kgs, extra melted.
Right.
And now again, that's reducing my energy cost. So there are various aspects of energy cost. One is an access through procurement and the other is answered through data and technology.
Okay, so these are the two ways like you reduce the energy consumption. All right. That's great. The second point would be environmentally friendly, right? You also mentioned that environment is something that people can start to benefit, right? ESG policies,
Sure.
even the sustainability angle. You can help them go in that direction through Metal Cloud. So how does that work?
Sure. So, the way the world is moving, we think the future of metal manufacturing in particular, given it's one of the highly or higher polluting industries, is going to be relying on two key pillars. One is digitization and the other is sustainability. And the sustainability is again going to be driven by the way you use your raw materials, the power you use, the materials you use, as well as how you're able to make more data-driven decisions on what to use when.
Right.
And that's where NowPurchase comes in. One of the highest categories on our platform is metal scrap. We do almost 8,000 tons a month today of metal scrap. And we believe,
month?
Yes. So,
Wow, that is very large.
so yeah, we're getting to almost 100,000 or lakh tons a year run rate now of metal scrap. And what we have realized is that metal scrap is an absolutely perfect substitute for, say, pig iron or sponge iron. Maybe people are not using it because people are realizing that, it's not that standardized. So if you could sort of so-called SKUize metal scrap, right? Metal scrap is no longer a vague product, but it's something like an SKU where you could look at the size, chemistry, combination. It is almost like a raw material product you could buy. That is the one thing.
Second, basically standardization is what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely, absolutely. The second thing around the environmental side is that globally, there are new regulations coming in. For example, Indian exporters to Europe, for some of the categories, they have a regulation called CBAM, which is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. And now they need to sort of make sure that they are below a certain amount in emissions. And these emissions, again, are coming from the materials, from the power. And not only they need to know this, but they need to also record it and prove it to the stakeholders overseas.
Correct.
So now how do they do that? That's where again something which we're currently building and developing at Metal Cloud is giving the people the access to not only know the monetary cost of raw materials they're using, but also the environmental cost of raw materials. Because it's possible that you might think that this product is 1 rupee cheaper, and you might buy that. But the way the world is moving, you will not only not look at the monetary cost, but also the carbon
the impact
cost
on the environment. Right?
Absolutely.
So that brings us into an important point. You mentioned that pig iron is the most polluting of all, invert raw material to a foundry. Correct?
So pig and sponge is one of the most polluting along with alloys, but it's an essential part of the industry. It's difficult to do away with. So what we're really talking about is not something we do away with. How do we create a better mix where there is pig iron, there is sponge, there's alloys, because they are essential to produce high quality castings.
Correct.
But how can you keep the mix better between them and scrap so that you can become again lower on the pollution aspect?
Correct. So how much do you expect you can reduce the input of pig iron? Like what is it right now, and how much do you aim it to be at?
So, if you look at it, it's very fascinating to me. I've visited initially foundries mostly in Bengal because that's where we are based out of. And for us, when we visited Bengal, we thought everyone has to use pig iron because Bengal is sort of the home of pig iron with majority of manufacturers not more than 100 kilometers from where we are sitting today. But as we started visiting foundries in South, in West and North, who are not close to the pig iron clusters, one very, very interesting thing, and this is something super fascinating, people are manufacturing the same casting with a different recipe. So I could be running a foundry in Bengal where I could be using 30% pig, 30% scrap, the rest could be returns and alloys. You could be running a foundry in Gurgaon or in Manesar where your mix of pig iron might be just 10%. And the 50% is coming from scrap.
Right.
So what it essentially means is that if there is access to standardized, good quality scrap at affordable market competitive rates,
right,
technically and theoretically, scrap could replace pig iron to a great extent. So that is the reality. So
right. So you're trying to say that pig iron is not so much something that a foundry desires, but only because it is standardized and it ensures like a reliable chemistry.
It's a few things, right? One is the reliable chemistry, standardized, and also the cost effectiveness.
Okay.
Because scrap is still a product which is deficit in India, right? India imports, I think, north of $3 to $4 billion worth of metal scrap from different geographies. That means India is not producing enough scrap, which is getting, reaching the landfills, not going through enough segregation at different touch points.
Right.
So if all of that scrap was tapped into and then standardized, then you could have cost-effective standardized scrap. So currently the problem relies on both sides, standardization and cost effectiveness. I think in NowPurchase, we have been able to solve for standardization to some extent. Cost effectiveness, I think, is still a journey ahead. As we keep building the volumes from 8,000 to 80,000 tons a month, we probably would get there.
But also when you mentioned if the CBAM policies come in effect, right, then probably your cost will be offset by the environmental tax that they probably import on
Yeah,
pig iron.
absolutely. Then I think people would start looking at the
Right.
non-monetary cost, right?
Right.
If good quality scrap is worth say 5-10% more,
Right.
and eventually they are getting more competitive with
Right.
someone in Germany, they would eventually buy the
So you're
scrap.
trying to break the entire per kg mentality.
I think eventually it has to do that, right?
Right,
Because
right.
how does it matter whether I am buying scrap which is 40 rupees a kg or 35 rupees a kg? It eventually matters how much that scrap, what is the yield of that scrap, how is it resulting in the total chemistry, how is it eventually making sure that my per kg melting cost is optimized, right?
Correct, correct.
Because per kg of each raw material does not really have that much impact as much as the per kg of the total charge mix, right? That's what you really want to optimize,
Correct.
which is essentially what even Metal Cloud does through one of its modules.
Correct, correct. Okay, so I think you shared with me a case study of a very large foundry in the south, that where you were able to optimize their charge, since you mentioned, to such an extent where you eliminated pig iron entirely, right? I think I came across this on a webinar. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, it's a combination of things which happened there, and their focus more was just how do they make sure it's a large, massive foundry, one of the largest in the country. Their focus was make sure that how do we just run the foundry seamlessly without being dependent on a particular skill set of a particular team member, and how does it just run standardized across day and night, 24/7 across I think 15-20 furnaces of theirs. And their challenges
15-20 furnaces.
Yes, so it
Okay,
was having
this is a
foundries.
very large foundry we're talking about.
So they had multiple challenges because they were not operating just the induction furnace; they also had a holding furnace. So they were looking at how do you optimize the charge mix, not just from induction perspective, but on holding furnace as well. So what we did was we spent time, our team led by Ankan spent a lot of time at their foundry, just mapping each and every step. And once we understood what's happening, we were able to come back, put it on our idea board, and actually come up with a solution or part of the variants of the Metal Cloud module, where they could actually literally map out their entire melting flow from the holding furnace to the induction furnace. And literally that is now, I would say, digitizing and spitting out a charge mix, which is getting sort of relayed to their melting professionals on the furnace floor before every heat, and they sort of know what to melt.
Correct.
So it's no longer a process which is dependent on too much of human involvement. The involvement is more from a know-how perspective, and that know-how we have kept on trying to make it part of the Metal Cloud solution.
Correct. So just a follow-up question on that. When you look at the costing also of these inverts for the charge mix, right? Would your software be able to predict which suppliers are in the long run saving them money for inputs?
Sure. So eventually NowPurchase believes that we would have a open-ended marketplace where we could build up all these solutions. But the way today stands, if you think about even an Amazon, right, or even let's say you had food delivery, we have Swiggy versus initially there was a company called Food Panda, where the delivery executors not directly buy the app, and they sort of failed to deliver to the commitment. Same with Amazon. Amazon had to have its own warehouses. Flipkart has e-cart. The reason all these e-commerce companies have done that is just to control the experience around quality delivery payments.
Yeah.
So similarly for us right now,
again, standardization.
Yes. So again, right now we are trying to control the experience of quality delivery payments and not really having the ability to give them supplier suggestions. But I think as the ecosystem matures, there would be certain set of categories of products where we might have to look at where we are not really ourselves servicing, where we might be open to have suggestions of various vendors or suppliers or procurement partners foundries could work with. The eventual end goal remains the same, right? How do we make sure foundries are extremely competitive, extremely productive? And we believe procurement and production optimization through technology are the only two answers for that. And that's what we at NowPurchase want to enable.
Correct. So that's great. That brings us into the raw material procurement, right? Since we're already there, might as well finish it off here. So raw material is something that you're doing a lot. You mentioned 8,000 tons a month, right? So talk a little bit about these new branded products that you just started, because I can see these bags with, probably Fe, Si, Mg, right? So ferrosilicon, magnesium. So talk a little bit about that.
So, initially we realized and thought that there are already branded solutions out there, or there are local solutions out there. And we spent time working with them in India as well. And what we realized was that these solutions are not always credible. So there were two buckets. Either there was the very expensive premium bucket of raw materials, or there were some categories of raw materials like, say, a graphite petroleum coke, where people were relying only on importers. We realized that for both these products, the nodularizers and the carbon additives, there needs to be some standardization, some credibility, where you are able to actually stand behind it and say that, yes, this is the chemistry, this is the sizing, and you'll get this every time. And that's what led to our development of a flagship range of products, which you're mentioning, where you see the vibrant colors pretty much.
Yeah, I really like the graphics, like the yellow, the blue, the white. Right.
So, and the thought process behind that is to be able to provide our foundries with a range of additives, nodularizers, which they can trust, which are coming at competitive prices, still maintaining a quality standardization. What we've realized is not about the best quality. It's always about, can I get the same quality every time? Because once you get a quality and you sort of adjust your production process according to it, and tomorrow, even if you get a superior quality or an inferior quality, you have to again adjust your production process. So if I can come in and be like, you can get the same products day in, day out from us, that standardization is going to be invaluable. And that's where our flagship range comes in. We have started with 4 SKUs right now. Current focus is to go deeper with these 4 SKUs and get more customers onto it, solve the customers' problems, and then maybe keep building up and expand the product range.
Okay, great. So these basically, how are you guaranteeing the quality for these products?
Sure. So firstly, it's not like suddenly we got up one day and started selling these 4 SKUs
Correct.
in our own branding.
Correct.
Over the last 3.5, 4 years, we have been dealing with all these 4 SKUs, working with either brands or manufacturers or importers. And we were able to really understand on the ground level what is really happening here.
Correct. On the trading front of things.
Yes, so we really knew what is happening, who demands what, and what's all happening. So that is the number one thing. Second thing, we spend time working with a lot of manufacturers who are our contract partners, both in India and overseas, spending time with them, signing exclusive MOUs with them that they are only going to be working with us. That is the second level. Third level is building our own team of metallurgists. So today, I think there are close to 8 metallurgists who work at NowPurchase. I think this is something which we have learned and seen some of the solution-driven companies in the space like Foseco, others, Pioneer. But we believe this can happen at a much, much democratized level to access to every foundry. Correct. That's the third. And fourthly, just building our insanely robust systems around QC. So quality control, how it flows through our warehouse. So this is something which we control the delivery. It's only through our own warehouses. There's no dispatch even from the contract manufacturers. Everything comes to the warehouse, gets checked, literally every dispatch which happens, we also are recording the data real time. So I could go up and be like, okay, if 3 tons got dispatched to this foundry yesterday, I could go to our internal systems and actually pull up 5 videos which would showcase the size and chemistry of it.
So you provide raw material, right? You guarantee the quality. Now you're branding them. How does the credit work? Because people have a problem with that, right?
So I think in general, B2B businesses, not just for the foundry space, working capital, trade credit is a de facto part of it. Hona hi padta hai, uske bina hota nahi hai kaam.
Correct.
Right. So of course, we also have to provide credit as much as needed as the customer wants. So what I mean by that, we don't lead with credit. We want to ensure that there's enough value to the customer through our services where we are able to match the credit terms and go ahead. But that too, from a company which is now at 8,000 tons a month, we have to build scalable solutions. So what we have done is 2 or 3 things. One is whenever a customer walks into the door or anyone brings in the prospect, even if it's me, it goes through a credit check through our finance team. Okay. Only once a customer is approved by the finance team, we start transactions with them. Okay. Even if it's on delivery, the finance team approves the customer. So that's a mechanism which we have built. That is one. Okay. Second, we work very actively with a lot of platforms like Trades. So Trades is a government platform which is trade receivables exchange discounting system, where you could discount your customers' invoices if the customers are of a certain vintage and credit rating. So we use platforms like RXIL, Invoice Smart to do that. That is the second thing. Third is we work very, very actively with our companies, financing partners and fintechs across the country, where we are able to build different kinds of financing products for our customers itself, so that we are not just providing credit always on our books, but we are leveraging these financial products which might be valuable to the customer. Okay. So where it's actually coming to now is where we are actually going to customers and pitching them some of these financial solutions, saying that do you want a short-term working capital finance? Do you know what, you could actually optimize your ROCE if you were able to leverage this short-term purchase loan from a fintech in Bangalore. And a lot of these fintechs, while it seems natural to us because we are part of the ecosystem and our DNA, it's something which is alien to majority of the brick and mortar industry. Correct. And over a period of time, we must have spoken to a little over 100 fintechs in the country. We're working with close to 10 of them. So now we're able to bring all of that expertise and give it back to the customer, resulting in a win-win. Not just us being able to provide the credit in our terms, but actually being able to provide value to the customer when they ask for credit, rather than just making it a sort of a bottleneck in the transaction.
Correct. So to answer a long story short, you do provide credit after a risk assessment of some sort, right? And that is how then you give them probably a limit.
Yeah, give them a limit, as well as provide them various platforms where we could discount these bills,
Okay.
give them financing, so that it's not always on our own books. Yeah.
Okay. So are there any other value, maybe additions that you could provide from the scrap side of things, like that we've not spoken about?
Sure. So, scrap for us started off as a place where we were just trading in it. Then it moved to a place where we realized that there is places you can procure scrap which are not really well discovered, which are small organizations, mid-sized factories, auctions. And then it moved to a place where we had to further backward integrate and build our own scrap recycling center. So we have one in Bengal. We are going live with one in Pune by the end of this month. Probably by the time we put this podcast out, it'll be live. So in these centers, we're primarily doing three things. Either we're segregating scrap by chemistry.
Right.
So we have our own infrastructure, Spectrometer. We are either cutting them through our shearing machines or our teams of gas cutters, or we have our own baling machines. These are 2-3 processes which we are doing on the scrap side to provide value. The other thing, which is not directly on the scrap, but on the delivery of scrap, all our deliveries are having real-time delivery. So whether you procure from us from Bengal, Jharkhand, Pune, Coimbatore, wherever, you would get a real-time GPS tracking of the delivery, much like you get when you order something on Swiggy. So you could really see where exactly your truck is. But I think that's something which is a big headache, right? Customers are still calling up the vendor, sir, where is the truck? Truck nahi pahuncha.
Yeah, so much of time wasted on communication.
So much of time wasted, and that too, communication is not reliable.
Correct.
My truck has gotten breakdown. That's something which is not really proven, right?
Correct.
Now you have a GPS tracking. You can open your WhatsApp where you get the link, and you can click it anytime. You really know where your truck is, and you could really plan your goods movement as well, right? You don't have to rely suddenly saying, "Oh, truck has really landed up." Now you don't have someone at your stores to sort of invert it. The GRN is not happening. You have proactive knowledge to that you can manage your operations better as well.
Correct. So I think we've covered a lot of topics, right? I just want to wrap up with one last question about the scrap market. Considering the recycling scenario today, right? There's a very big push for scrap recycling, correct? Even to the extent that maybe governments are telling foundries to use less ingots and more scrap. Maybe customers are doing that to foundries. So how do you see NowPurchase placed at this crossroad?
Sure. So I think we are fortunate that we are pretty much been in the space for the last 4-5 years. I would say proactively been here. So we are fortunate to be at the right time and hopefully the right place.
Yeah.
And with respect to India, I definitely think it's the right place. In terms of the scrap recycling, I think there is always going to be scope for many, many players. Given the market size already is $20 billion, it's going to keep rising.
Correct.
So there's going to be scope for many players. There are already some legacy players which have kept scaling up and become large. We believe there's huge scope for us to become a 1 million tons a year player, which is at around 100,000 tons a year today. We could be a 1 million tons a year player as well.
Right.
We believe this is going to be a combination of accurate sourcing and discovering untapped places. It's going to be a combination of having a model where we're able to set up recycling centers either directly or work with recyclers by giving them our knowledge, our processes, so they could become more profitable.
Correct.
And do this across the country, because currently we're just doing it at 2 places. Our dream would be that in the next few years, we're having 10 such centers, doing 1 million tons a year. That is where we believe the recycling game would take us.
So the future looks bright.
Absolutely. I think the industry is such where there's so much scope, right? And we are a sort of enabler to the industry, where the industry is growing and we're enabling them with services. So because of that, we believe we are able to be at the right place and be able to part of the growth journey.
Correct. That's great. I think you covered a little bit about that. What is the vision and goal for NowPurchase for the next 10 years?
Sure. So we're looking at the decade right now, the next 5 years. We're talking a lot about the business, the metrics, the volume. But at the end of the day, a business is just a set of people united at a common purpose, and that's where our team lies. And we have been fortunate to be able to build a extremely driven, world-class, young, energetic, dynamic team over the course of last 5 years. We are a team of almost 100 people today. So I think from a business goal perspective, of course, we would love to see a business becoming large enough so that it becomes of an IPO scale in the next 5 years.
Right.
That is definitely one of our business goals.
Right.
But while that happens, we want to make sure this team and the new members who join us in the next 5 years are able to become extremely both capable and successful. And when I say successful, it's not just successful from the purpose of the fact that they led the company to IPO. We have a large chunk of the company in ESOPs, which, just for the knowledge of the readers, is basically employees get access to shares of the company.
Right.
And that is the ESOP plan. We have done one of the ESOP buybacks around 6 months back.
Yeah, I saw some posts about it. I think we'll try and put some pictures up.
Sure. So around 40 of our team members were able to sell some of their shares, which some of our investors wanted. We want that as the company scales and become IPO scale, a lot of these team members, the current and the future, are able to become both capable and financially successful as the company becomes. It's only going to be a success for me and the group and the team is if when the business succeeds, the folks who have been there to build the business are also succeeding, both in terms of their respect, their capability, and
basically
their
a chip of the upside.
Absolutely. They have to be part of the upside. Otherwise, the reason you come here every day, spend 10 hours, 12 hours at work is because you are having the joy of working with the right set of people.
Correct.
And if that does not happen, what's the fun of building the business?
Correct. So I think you covered my next question, which was about the ESOPs, right? So thank you.
Okay.
So since we are on the subject of employees, are you hiring?
Yes, we are always looking for.
Are there some ads we can put up on this podcast right now?
Sure. We are always hiring for the right folks. In fact, we have currently positions open across our technology and business teams, right from sales and development to procurement to operations to technology. And at NowPurchase, we really value experience, but we also believe that it's not always the years of experience. Sometimes you get a lot of experience in lesser years. So if you are someone who's out there, gained a lot of experience, not in terms of number of years, but just by doing various interesting things with maybe the right skill set, maybe the right education, you do not need to be from the foundry industry. So funnily enough, I think less than 5% of the people in the company are actually from even the metal space.
Right.
The rest of the folks have been extremely driven professionals who are problem solvers and been able to work with NowPurchase. Typically, our culture is that you come here, you learn from your seniors, you learn from your peers. There's a lot of online resources provided. We do a lot of learning sessions every couple of weeks in the company, and that's how you pick up things.
Right.
And so we'd love for people to join, and we are hiring across the country, in fact, now, not just in Calcutta, but in Pune, as well as our sales teams in different parts in South and North. Yeah.
Correct. So I think we'll put like an application below where they can send their inquiries for all positions. Right. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think, just from a perspective, I think it's amazing, where I think there are a lot of similarities in the Foundry podcast and even your journey in to what we had NowPurchase. Your family has been into the Foundry space
right.
For a long while.
Right.
And in a way, what you're doing with Foundry Shop and Foundry podcast is in a way being in the space and marrying technology. So it feels like talking to someone who is walking the same path.
Correct.
So I think it's awesome chatting. It's not feels like I'm talking to an interviewer, but someone who's living the same journey.
Correct.
And I think getting that sort of angle to the foundry space, right? I always found it baffling that such a large sector is so underrepresented, right?
Correct.
Whether it's underrepresented on a policy level, media level, social media level, podcast level. So I think some of that is changing thanks to folks like you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it has been. In fact, we've had some very, very senior people who don't usually open up, who have been really, really completely honest on the podcast. So that's very nice.
Absolutely. I think the setup, it's very different. You go to a media channel and do an interview versus a podcast.
Correct.
You're so much fun. You're just talking about. So I think great for the industry.
Correct.
And also great for the people following the industry because you get so much insights, right? We at our team also keep sharing some of your videos and we also figure out, okay, this is something interesting. We get to know something which you did not know about the industry.
Correct.
So I think it's a great win-win.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to be learning on this podcast especially about the stuff that you mentioned about data, energy optimization, right? All those things are completely new for certain people. So that's very nice.
No, I'm glad. I hope if we can add some value to your listeners, that'll be great.
Definitely. Where can they reach you?
I'm available at naman@nowpurchase.com.
If you go onto LinkedIn and you search for him, he's the guy holding the mic.
That's right. Naman Shah is on LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
So we'll put the link to Naman's LinkedIn in the description. And thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Naman, for having us.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ian. Pleasure.
Thank you so much. We're here with Ankan, right? Am I pronouncing that right again?
Yes, absolutely.
That's nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ian.
Ankan has been managing all the technical stuff at the back end, right? Basically doing all the programming. So you are very, very closely working with the foundries and understanding what the need is and what you are providing them with, right?
Correct.
So you explained to me a little bit off camera about how foundries are not catered to, and the smaller industries specifically are being left behind. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So largely, I think everybody is clear that we need digitization and we need technology, right? You'll see all of the conferences and everybody is talking about ki ye digitize karo, ye IoT, this, that, blah, 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 right? So one of the biggest questions is, but if you go and look into the foundries, there's barely any adoption. Like there's really any adoption.
Correct.
People honestly do not really have a clue on how to go about it, the majority of it. And this largely stems from, number one, all the technology providers that are there, right? They want to cater to large ticket size projects, right? So I am a technology provider or I'm a solutions provider. I'm going to come in, I'm like, okay, ye change karna hai process mein, wo karna hai, ye karo, wo karo, do all this. Here is a 1 crore quote and here is a 10 crore implementation plan. Here is a four-year plan, right? So what is happening is we're losing out because of this, right? And how are we losing out?
The industry is on a whole.
Yeah, on a whole, we're completely losing out on this. So the idea is that, what we're doing, and largely I work with Naman on strategy, right? And how we should be, overall propagating the technology to the market. We'll take very small interventions of technology and we'll plug it in. So one of the modules you would have seen, right, is we're doing a simple thing such as sending spectrometer readings to WhatsApp along with the addition dilution suggestions, right? Now, it may look very simple on the outside, but now most of the foundries are run over WhatsApp. Correct. They're literally fighting over WhatsApp.
Correct.
Are these heats done? Are we in time? Are we in schedule? Are these being produced?
Correct.
Right. The amount of tension-free and hassle-free they get just by getting that level of transparency is the kind of value that we're going to create. And the thing is that anything that you implement with Metal Cloud, right, you'll be up and live in 7 days.
Oh.
So the idea is, So the idea is that take a small module, just implement that quickly, get the value, then move on to the next iteration.
Correct. So every basically module of your system builds on itself.
Correct.
It's like an upgrade. Okay.
So it's plug and play. Take a small thing, do a charge mix module, do this. And it's very important for them to basically look at, digitization in a way that they can consume, right? Otherwise it's a 10-year discussion and everybody's scared.
Right. Also, I think what you said is very powerful because foundries, smaller ones typically, are already used to working on WhatsApp. So essentially what you've done is only building up on the model that they're already comfortable with.
Absolutely.
You're not trying to break through the noise and say, this is my software, ditch WhatsApp, ditch your ERP, use only this.
Correct.
I think that's something that's really powerful and why you've been able to cut across to the market so effectively.
Absolutely.
That's good. So tell us a little bit more about this new kiosk system, which I just saw earlier. Right? We'll put a little bit of some images.
Got it. So the kiosk system is very simple, right? If you look at, what's happening is I am an operator in the foundry and I have to run 6, 7 heats or 10 heats or 20 heats.
Right.
Now, the kiosks gives me direct information on what are the heats that I have to run, what are the raw materials, in what sequence, right? And why this is very important. Everybody already has that intuition out there. But now, coming back to the original thesis, you have the actual data and you have accurate data, right? Accurate data of what? So this kiosk allows you to enter a lot of what you call information on how much did I charge, right? What are basically the raw materials that needs to go in, at what temperature I'm tapping, right?
Correct.
Now, but very importantly, this kiosk is integrated to IoT systems, which automatically pulls in for information.
Correct.
So for example, when I am recording information of the chemistry in my log sheet, there could be a mistake, there could be delays, there could be any kind of errors there. But now when I'm entering data into the kiosk, right, it will automatically get streamed there. So at the end of the day, I know my power reading comes from the energy meter rather than me manually scrambling to write all of that.
Correct.
And then my spectrometer reading comes there. My pyrometer reading automatically comes there.
Correct.
So now, and why is this information important? People think that, oh, we are trying to, enforce, or we're trying to ensure that, the data is automated. No, people need this data so that they understand what they did well.
And also they can drive decisions with it.
Exactly.
Right.
So now when I, so it's a very common thing. Something goes wrong. Everybody goes back to their WhatsApp groups.
And they start studying everything, right?
Yeah, the WhatsApp groups. Arey, isme kya hua? What happened? What are the mistakes?
Correct.
What was the temperature?
Correct.
Was the melter at fault, or was the mold not done very correctly?
This also ties back to what Naman mentioned. He said data is not real if it's not real time, right?
Absolutely.
This is what you're getting to.
Correct. And the simplest solution to this, honestly, would have been that all of the data is captured automatically.
Correct.
Why have a kiosk?
Correct.
Why should a human even enter that data?
Correct.
Right. That should be the fundamental question. But now, if I automate all the data sources, it's going to cost me millions.
Correct.
It's going to cost me a lot. So that's why the idea is you give a solution which allows good amount of human input and good amount of automation, so that you have affordable digitization that can be deployed within 7 days. And that's how the industry is going to go forward.
Correct.
Not by deploying some really massive software for 20, 30 lakhs, and only a few of the handful of foundries are going to get access to that technology.
Correct. That's good. I think we've covered a lot of the behind the scenes working as to the thought behind it and what the expected outcome is for the foundry man. So that's very nice. Ankan. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for doing this for the foundry space. Right. I mean, having me, that's thank you so much for that. But the way that you're able to, bring it out to the people.
Correct.
On all the different kind of stakeholders, right? I think in the foundry space who are working, right? I think this is a great start of where people will get to understand what other people are doing.
Correct.
Okay, and hopefully together we can solve this.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. Like for example, as we said, we're the only player who's working into small technology interventions.
Correct.
Why don't other people start building those small interventions? And then together we can basically combine all of this to give a solution to the foundry. Right. Nobody's working together right now. People think that, sirf our solution is going to work, everybody else is a competitor.
Correct.
Right. So coming back to one of the most important
visions. Synergy basically, right?
Yeah. Right. So it's very strange. Okay, I'll tell you a very simple vision that we have from the technology front. If you look at, places like Germany and all, every equipment is streaming data.
Okay.
Every equipment is streaming data in a standard format, right? So now you already have that data center. You only need experts to come in with their adapters of technology, which can plug into that data. Same thing, like for example, here we are giving people the way to track their GPS trucks. You go to the US, all trucks are already streaming GPS data.
Correct.
So as a technology provider, I can work with other technology providers on a standard data stream.
To build on their data that they already have.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, every equipment manufacturer in India is like, no, if you want to take this data, pay this extra.
Correct.
So one of the most important things that's part of our vision is, can we build that standard data layer, right? Which allows us to tap into all of the equipment, and all of the technology providers start working together.
Correct.
Right. So I think that is one of the most important parts. And this only is not, restricted to just digitization, right? We spoke about scrap. Naman spoke about scrap a lot, right? If you look at any kind of, system here in Kuwait, the moment a car is dismantled, any magnetic and non-magnetic thing gets separated into the value chain and they move into other places. Here what happens, that car is crumbled and all of the valuable and non-valuable things
it's gone together.
They gone together, and therefore the value is lost.
Correct.
So we want to be part of the ecosystem where we are able to build this infrastructure for India. For whether it's the standard data for all the equipment, or number two is you have these different layers of value chain in procurement, like in scrap, like in any other thing. So that now you're able to get the maximum amount of value that now that goes on to the foundries and then we are able to compete at the international space.
Correct.
Right. So this is, I think, the two things that I really wanted to mention, and I hope this initiative that you started allows all different foundry solution providers
Correct.
to start working together.
Right. So thank you so much. I definitely think that this was really informative. People are going to really learn a lot and also familiarize themselves with your software before they actually reach out to you. So I think that is basically the reason that we sat down together. So thank you so much. And
thank you so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
So why exactly are there 100 copies of the goal lying in your office this morning? You all guys will have to stick around for maybe this.
So we are shooting this just on the day before IFX, and our goal is always to give value to our customers. And we were thinking about what could we provide to our customers, which is insanely valuable,
correct,
rather than just another memento or a diary or a pen. And then we thought this is one of the most interesting books we have come across. We went through a bunch of videos of Mr. Goldratt, and it really helps you think about its supply chain.
Correct.
At the end of the day, NowPurchase is a supply chain business, and Foundries are supply chain businesses. So we thought this book, The Goal by Mr. Eli Goldratt, would be something really valuable to give to our customers and our key prospects. Something they could take back and cherish and feel, we are able to add some value. Whether they work with NowPurchase or not is totally secondary.
Correct.
But the fact that they've interacted with us, we want to be able to provide value at some stage in any small way or the other.
Right.
And this book is just another quest to provide that value. Hence, you saw a little over 100 of them,
that's good.
Which we'll be using over the next 3 days.
Yeah, and what is really important is they have also been with, there's a handwritten note inside each of them.
Yeah.
So that's 100 times somebody has written this entire handwritten note. That's very nice. So whose idea was it?
Okay, so I'll have to take the credit. So it was my idea.
It was his idea. Anyway, Naman, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Anyway, that's good. And thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next show.
Okay.